What am I doing here? I'm a game reviewer now. I left multiplayer PvP games behind. I want to focus on games that I can have fun with, or games that I can make fun of for 15 minutes. I don't want to play PvP games anymore, but I still have a bone to pick with you, Apex. You took over 6,000 hours of my life from me. You carved out a path for me to even be a content creator to begin with. Were it not for you, I would have never found the streamer that inspired me to give streaming a try, and I wouldn't have ever considered being a video game creator. I would have stuck to stand-up comedy. You set this thing in motion, Apex, and before I walk away from PvP games and focus on my own happiness, I must address you, everything about you and your community, and your dev team. I need to, once and for all, put to rest my thoughts and feelings for you, Apex, and get the closure my ex-wife never gave me. Hi, my name is Kaiser, and on this channel I do video game reviews, rants, and opinions, and if that's something that interests you, then please hit that subscribe button down below. I'm trying to hit 5K by the end of the year, and we're almost to 4K, so I think we can actually do it. But other than that, enjoy the video. So yeah, Apex is a game I have a pretty long history with. I started playing the game on day 3 of release on my PS4 when I was still married all the way back in 2019. Between my PlayStation 4, Origin, and Steam, I racked up over 6,000 hours on this game. And I'm still dog shit! I played from Season 0 to Season 14 or so. I quit when Vantage got released. I say quit. I more or so stopped playing for extended periods of time, coming back to the game on occasion to check out an event or a new legend here or there, but I never really dedicated more than an hour at a time to it. Truth be told, I can't even tell you what's happened in the time since I left, but today I'm gonna go through it all. The ups, the downs, the good, the bad, and the big fat smelly ass. This is an in-depth look at Apex Legends. Chapter 1, the gameplay. The simplest and easiest place to start is where I would most likely consider the best aspect of Apex, the gameplay. Apex Legends, if you don't know, is a battle royale, and if you're familiar with battle royales, you know how this works. Drop in with your squad, duo, or your crippling depression and nothing else. Find guns, backpacks, armors, grenades, items, and hopefully a sense of purpose so you can finally move out of your parents' house and quit acting like you're going to find your true love on Tinder, and then fight and attempt to survive your way through the other players as the map grows smaller and smaller due to a damaging entity known only as the Ring. Apex is largely considered a pioneer in the battle royale genre, introducing things like the concept of respawning your teammates even after they've been fully killed, hero shooter concepts with each legend having unique abilities, and a movement system that many people, including myself, find incredibly satisfying. You see, Apex's movement is probably the best part of the game. It's incredibly fluid, and the engine the game is built on, the Source engine, is known for its exploits that allow various amounts of momentum-based text. Wall jumping, tap strafing, punch boosting, super gliding, and more are all various different techniques used by players to create a fun, fast-paced, flowing movement that makes the game fun and unique. And Respawn takes every opportunity they can to attempt to rip the movement from us. This is not going to be the first major criticism I levy at Respawn. In fact, I have an entire section later on in the video dedicated to them and my many grievances, but I am going to take time in other sections to talk about my least favorite thing about them, their baffling decision making. Respawn hates movement players and constantly attempts to patch out movement text in the game in the effort of fairness. They outright refuse to implement things like wall running, which was a staple in the Titanfall franchise, for which this game is built off of, and will nerf things like tap strafing and outright remove things like punch boosting. This effectively lowers the skill ceiling of the game, meaning they can draw everyone closer and closer in skill level artificially, which is a bad way to design PvP games. Part of the fun of PvP games is the ability to push your skills as far as they can go. That, and imagine the boiling rage on some poor bastard's face when you teabag him after he almost beat you, and you weren't even the one to kill him, it was your mates. But the movement community of Apex is always finding new weird ways to incorporate Source's momentum engine. If you're interested in more, I would definitely check out Moki Sniper, who's known for finding all of these techs. The next element of gameplay is the gunplay. Apex works off of a projectile-based bullet system. If you aren't aware, shooters have one of two options when designing bullets. Hit scan, which means that wherever your cursor is pointing when you click, the bullet goes there instantaneously. Examples of hit scan games is all of Valorant, Soldier 76 from Overwatch, or the old charge rifle from Apex itself before they changed it. Someone is most likely going to bring up the Havoc and its select fire, but to my knowledge, that hasn't been in the game since like Season 5 at the very least, and I think even before that. In any case, projectile is as it sounds. When you shoot a bullet, it has a travel time, so you have to adjust for the arc of the bullet drop and the distance it has to travel. Thank fuck there's no implementation of wind direction and shit. Generally speaking, the bullets in Apex have a pretty significant bullet drop, except energy weapons, but we'll get to that in a moment. Bullets travel until they hit an object or until they hit the skybox. How fast a bullet travels and how much it drops varies from weapon to weapon, but generally speaking, you can learn the drop distance fairly easily most of the time. You'll be in mid to close range fights anyway, with long-range fights rarely happening for extended periods of time. Now, I know this is titled an in-depth look, but I am not going to go gun by gun and break each of them down, mainly because numbers and metas change constantly due to the live service nature of the game, but also because I can already predict the length of this video, and I would like to have it done before Christmas of 2024. So with that being said, 5 different ammo types in Apex are as follows: light, heavy, shotgun, energy, and sniper. In general terms, light weapons fire faster and have less damage per bullet. Heavy weapons fire slower with more damage per bullet. Shotguns are close-range burst weapons with their damage spread out over pellets. Energy weapons have some unique feature about them, normally having something to do with the rate of fire slowly increasing, as what would happen with the Havoc, Devotion, and Nemesis, but also other things like the triple shot from the aptly named Triple Take, and a never-ending clip with an overheat mechanic like the L-Star, and actually, I'm not sure what the Volt special characteristic is. Exception to every rule, I guess, and sniper ammo weapons are long range with high damage and low fire rate. Between the different ammo types, there are 7 different classes of gun. Each of these different classes of guns have different things like strafe speeds, running speeds while they're out, and things like that. Assault rifles, which have the most consistent rate of fire and are best at mid to long range. SMGs, short range, high DPS, low magazine guns meant to quickly track nearby opponents. LMGs, which have lower rates of fire with larger magazines and a slower strafe speed, and are best used at mid-long ranges to pepper and harass enemy players. Pisticles? What the fuck is wrong with me? Pistols, typically short-ranged, high-fire rate weapons, and generally weak except for the Wingman, which has a high damage output and is regularly considered to be the best sidearm in the game. Shotguns are short-range, high-burst damage weapons. Marksmen is the weapons that fill in the spot between assault rifles and snipers. And finally, snipers, long-range, yada 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 yada. I said this part already. Each gun category has its obvious strengths and weaknesses, and what 2 guns you'll be running when you get into a match will be decided by the combination of your personal playstyle and the inherent RNG in every match. While you might favor close-up LMG shotgun styles, you aren't always going to be in a position to do that, and only having 2 guns means that you need to understand that you can't fill in every weakness of your loadout. Between the RNG of battle royales, the heavy bullet drop of the guns, and the insane movement, Apex has gained a reputation as being the battle royale that takes the most skill to get good at. And after playing other battle royales and performing far better in those compared to Apex, I can honestly say I get it. Fortnite, PUBG, Warzone, and many more have come out since then, are all far easier to be good at than Apex. Apex is still a battle royale though, the most casual form of the shooter genre, but in the end, it takes a lot of skill and the time to get good in, and we can at least sit with that comfort. An interesting but small thing to note before we continue is also the crafting system. This is an odd system. Basically, opening loot bins and interacting with these blue silos give you crafting materials. Inside the crafter are 2 guns that rotate each split, ammo, upgrading your armor, unique items that rotate daily, and unique items that rotate weekly. There's also a bonus option if you have a support legend on your team to craft teammates' banners, but I'll cover a little bit more of that later. Before we can engage in any of that, though, we must pick the character with which we'll be playing the game. The Legends. Chapter 2. Legendary Dog Bollocks. Apex's unique selling point, until every fucking body else started doing it, was that you had different character abilities in a battle royale. Each legend has their own backstory and lore attachments, but further than that, they all have their own tactical, ultimate, and passive. There is also an actual class system in the game now, but I'll talk a bit more on that in a little bit. And just like with the guns in the game, I'm not going to be covering every legend individually because all that can change at any time, and the basic overall approach to legends is far more important than each legend itself. The evolution of legend abilities is actually the far more fascinating topic to me. Back in Season 11 with Maggie's release, I actually did a video on this very channel titled Damage Dealing Tacticals Don't Belong in Apex, which was a trash video. I don't recommend it. I basically just went over which legends had damage dealing tacticals and then said, yeah, I don't like how many there are, with no actual logical breakdown as to why I don't like it. So let me try to explain. In the beginning of Apex, way back in Season 0, there was only one damage-dealing tactical, Caustic's Gas. I guess if you want to count Bangalore's smoke canister's 10 impact damage, sure, but you didn't use it for that. Caustic's gas was a controlled tactical, one you had to use, well, tactically. He was built for locking down areas through strategic placements of his gas canisters, and the damage it did wasn't even that high. It was more disorienting and giving Caustic wall hacks. It was basically a better Bangalore smoke you couldn't use as fast. It served the same purpose other tacticals did, to enhance the gunplay. You see, the idea in the early days of Apex was that tacticals didn't win fights for you, but instead assisted your gunplay. The devs were once quoted as saying, "We believe in gunplay first, ability second." And that philosophy has since been tossed out of a 40-story window. So many tacticals now just deal straight up damage and can win fights for you. Some abilities, before being reworked, would deal damage for literally no reason. Rev's old Silence and Sear's old tactical both dealt 10 damage on top of their other effects for, honestly, reasons nobody could ever tell. Sear before his rework was especially a problem child, with it having a good counted 9 effects for no conceivable purpose. In general, they seem to have pulled back on some of the more problematic tacticals, but we still have things like Ballistic, who deals damage and can straight up make you stop shooting your fucking gun, which is asinine. There's also a big problem with a lot of visual clutter when it comes to this game. The abilities have gotten so big and out there that things like ultimates are now just complete and utter crap. I don't have this part recorded because I didn't start writing this video or even think about planning this video until very recently, but I was playing a game and I was on Stormpoint and one of my teammates went down and I went to get high ground to see where they were down. And when I looked down, I didn't see anyone else there. So I asked them if anyone was there and they said no, they had left. You know, liar, just like most teammates are. So I go in for the res and instantly from like 4 different teams, I'm hit with a Conduit ult, a Horizon ult, a Caustic ult, a Bangalore ult, a Gibby ult. Just like a bunch of shit just got thrown into this center area that I was in and I couldn't tell what was going on. Another point that sticks out in my mind too, as I'm thinking about this, is a few days ago I started I was playing the game and we walked into a team fight, and outside of that team fight we ended up like just seeing, so I couldn't tell you what was going on. It felt like Overwatch. There was so many abilities and visual clutter and sounds going off, and it's just become ridiculous. But overall, legend balancing is fine with some minor annoyances. Team comp honestly doesn't matter that much outside of high-level competitive play, and it never really has. There are legend synergies for sure, but because of the way legend abilities work, it's really down to your own personal taste and playstyle. You're never going to lose a game because the enemy teams have a certain legend and you don't. Again, high-level competitive is different, and I do mean competitive, by the way. I'm going to cover ranked and competitive scenes later on in this video, but people who think you need certain comps to reach pred are losers and who don't actually deserve pred. You can reach pred on any legend of any strength as long as you understand their abilities and the basic fundamentals of Apex. While some legends are obviously stronger than others just due to the nature of having an ever-growing roster and being a hero shooter in general, you can use practically any legend you like and have a good time. I will say that where hero selection does matter a little outside of competitive play is map selection. I have a section for maps coming soon, but if you're playing on a big map like Broken Moon or Storm Point, then having legends without movement abilities can make the maps feel like a slog. And as a Mirage main, it greatly saddens me when I have to slowly trek through the open wastelands of fuck all for 20 minutes. But outside of their individual abilities, each legend also belongs to a class, and this might be someone's only argument for team comps mattering, but it still doesn't, so don't worry. Now, the class system in Apex used to be the most worthless thing in gaming history. It literally meant nothing and did nothing to help you identify the legend's playstyle. Nowadays, I would say it still doesn't help you identify the playstyles, but it does mean something, which class passive the legend has. Assault legends can carry more ammo and can open red loot bins for more attachments, which I believe works off of a smart loot system, but don't quote me on that. Skirmishers can scan care packages to reveal the red weapon within them. Oh, something I forgot to mention. Red weapons can only be found in care packages. They are essentially limited ammo, souped up versions of ground weapons. They rotate every season and you can only find them in care packages. This is done partly to have badass gear and partly to alleviate the loot clutter on the ground. The only gun that has never entered the ground and never will is the Kraber, the most powerful gun in the game, doing a whopping 145 to the body and 252 to the head, which was also nerfed at one point, so that if you have a purple helmet or purple armor, you can no longer be one-shot by it, which is one of the dumbest changes ever made to this game, but that's another topic for a later part in the video. Next up are recon legends. Recon legends can scan these things called recon beacons and reveal the locations of every enemy on the map through some kind of snapshot of red arrows. You can't watch them move, but it does give you a good idea where to find the next enemies. Then you have supports. Supports can open blue bins for additional healing items and can also craft banners that have already expired. And finally are the controllers. Controllers can use control stations to reveal the next ring location. I would give you the thing that puts each legend in each class, but I honestly can't figure that out. Skirmishers and assault legends are pretty similar, with some assaults like Ash seeming more like a skirmisher choice, and recon seem like it would be made up entirely of wallhack characters, but then Vantage is randomly thrown in there. Supports seem like they are classified by healing or revive abilities, but Loba's in there and she doesn't belong. The only consistent class is controllers, which is made up entirely of legends who excel at locking down areas with defensive traps and stationary tacticals. Overall, why a legend goes where seems to be based off vague suggestions and themes, and probably mainly exists as a way to change legends without actually changing them, which might be why Mirage was once a skirmisher and became a support later on. Overall, each legend feels unique. They all have their own individual hitboxes, and while some tacticals can bleed together a bit, like Pathfinder, Vantage, and Horizon all having very similar vertical mobility, they can also be unique even then. Pathfinder's grapple can attach to anything and even provide horizontal mobility. Horizon's lift is locked but sends her higher and faster, and Vantage's bat thing sucks doo-doo dog water is in desperate need of a rework. To close off this section, because I know somebody will probably wonder about it, I'll tell you my top 3 legends to play to go in order from least to most. Octane, Pathfinder, and then Mirage is my sweet baby boy, who I will protect with my life. Chapter 3. The worst performance of my life, and they totally brought it. Apex Legends is one of the worst performing games on the market. The best and easiest place to start is more than likely the 20-tick servers. If you aren't aware, the number of ticks a server has is directly responsible for the response time of actions on the screen syncing with what happens to each individual player. So if your tick rate is high, then things happening to each player are consistent and fair. But if it is low, then kiss my ass, player, because you're about to die to so much bullshit nearly every round, and we are going to laugh at you while it happens. Here are just some of the problems that occur due to 20-tick servers. Bad audio. The audio in this game is infamously atrocious. Not only have the devs outright refused visual audio, which me and the rest of the deaf hard of hearing community have been asking for from the gaming industry for years now, but for people with normal hearing, they equally have issues because audio constantly drops out, unsyncs with what's happening, dampens or quiets, and sometimes becomes too loud to where you will hear things that you aren't supposed to be hearing. If that wasn't bad enough, the devs chose to add ambient noises out the ass, random whooshes and machines whizzing up and waterfalls and bird calls and the flow of lava. This would all be fine, but they are the loudest things in existence, and there's no sub option to turn down the ambient shit. I even stopped playing with music in the game a long time ago to try and circumvent the problem, but it doesn't help much. But no worries, player, what the devs have instead decided to do was add a little red icon that shows up to tell you should be hearing something, but aren't. Instead of fixing the fucking issue, they gave more evidence the issue is occurring. Outstanding. Being killed when you shouldn't. This is the most common problem in Apex. The amount of times I have died from behind a door or around a corner or through solid rock or in Wraith phase, which I will remind you is a state of invulnerability, is insane. And look, if it was only me, I'd be like, yo, fair game, my internet just be ass. But it isn't. This is a heavily common occurrence with entire compilations being able to be made. Every time someone dies around a corner or through a door, comments and chat light up with, feels like Apex, man, because that's exactly what it is. And this one in particular is a big problem for me, because losing in video games is one thing. It's actually a common thing. I've already explained this. I suck at these kinds of games, okay? But losing when you shouldn't because the game just decided your actions don't matter is a beast with which I will fight until we enter the depths of hell together. Nothing in gaming tilts me off the side of the planet more and makes me want to cause Hiroshima levels of destruction than dying to something that isn't my fault. If I lose because I'm bad, then fine. I'm not the best mechanically at video games, and I'm not delusional enough to think otherwise. But dying to shit that was out of my control, especially especially when it is something the devs can fix, will drive me into my 10th trip to the mental hospital. At least I can get my final stamp on the loony card and get a free therapy session for my troubles, I guess. No regs. What's worse than being killed when you shouldn't? Your enemies getting DBZ levels of plot armor. If you aren't aware, no regging stands for no registration, and it means you see the damage happen, you hear the damage happen, you feel the damage happen like a sensual cupping of your balls, but the damage doesn't happen. This is one of the weirder occurrences because some seasons the no regs are so rampant, there have been clips of people dumping entire mags into an enemy just for not a single point of damage to happen, and other times I've seen shotguns deal damage with some pellets but not other. The EVA 8 is the worst one for this. You will have people dead center, but only about a third of the pellets do damage. It's so weird. Item pickup desync. This one doesn't happen as much as the others, but it's still a problem. Sometimes you will hover over an item, very purposely click that item, and then the item will end up in your inventory, only for a little while later you to realize you no longer have that items. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you'll notice it right away. One time I was picking up a gun, and the game made me drop my previous gun, but then it would place the other gun back on the ground. This happened 5 times in one match. And again, this is just some of the issues. I'm sure I've missed some other people will bring up. And for the record, no other shooter game, to my knowledge, has this low of a tick rate. The lowest I could find was Fortnite with 30. And some games have some games like Valorant have upwards of 128 tick rate. That is over 6 times the amount Apex has. In addition to the shitty server tick rate, the Apex servers are just generally run by like 4 underfed hamsters with one of them having a broken leg and another one is dead. It's fucking pathetic. Every season, the beginning of the season is plagued with disconnection errors, a lack of an ability to get into the game or to even play, random jumps in queue times, and more. There's even memes around how easy it is to get latency and connection errors in Apex. Some people think it's just people's internet because they are one of the lucky few who have not had problems, but even big streamers with high connection speeds have consistent issues. Hell, the issues are so prominent that there have been tournaments ruined by server issues. Server issues and optimization. This is probably the most disappointing to me because with the server issues, we can place some of the blame on EA and their greedy bullshit to not spend a little extra on better servers, but the optimization is on the devs. This is the type of game where playing on high graphics option is just asking for trouble. If you don't have an absolutely beefy PC, you will face constant issues, with some creators releasing guides on how to turn off as much insignificant shit as you can for every small bit of performance enhancement. It is atrocious. You could drop into a match, run to a corner, look at one wall, have a perfectly stable 60 frames a second, then turn 90 degrees to look at the other wall and drop to 40 or even 30 frames. It's insulting. And with the amount of visual bullshit that goes on in this game, it's difficult for even big streamers with dual PC setups to keep a consistent frame rate at times. A drop of 1 or 2 frames is one thing, but I've seen people drop to well below 15 FPS because things got a little busy. The optimization of Apex is worse than Hearthstone. Anyone who's ever played Hearthstone on max settings knows how ridiculous that game is. I'm just placing cards. Why are you having trouble? Chapter 4. Choo-choo, here comes the hate train. This is just a section for me to bitch about miscellaneous things I absolutely hate. Jacking off your gun. For whatever reason, Apex has this really obnoxious mechanic where when you first pick up a gun, a little animation has to play before you can shoot it. If you cancel this animation by putting the gun away, or picking up another gun, or using an ability, or whatever the case may be, the next time you go to pull out that gun, it will force the animation to play. This will always happen mid-fight when you need that extra 5 nanoseconds to win the fight. It will lead to your death every time, and you'll probably be like me, walking shamelessly into your local electronics retailer to purchase another mouse. Bullet suppression. So Bangalore, one of the legends in this game, has a passive that allows her to run faster when she's getting shot at, called double time. It's pretty useful for rotations or pushing into an enemy's face to shove your peacekeeper down their throat. There's a counter to it though. Getting shot. Bullet Bullet suppression is a mechanic that slows you down whenever bullets are hitting you, and it stacks with multiple instances. So if you have at least 2 people shooting at you, you basically slow to a standstill. If you don't get what I'm saying, there is a mechanic in the fucking game that forces you to slow down so your opponents can kill you easier. Literally removing as much skill as possible. Oh, what's that? You spent a lot of time learning how to double wall bounce, tap strafe around a corner into a climb that gets you out of danger? Well, fuck you and the momentum to pull that off. We are going to remove all of that when you're getting shot at. The double time I mentioned earlier can basically be canceled out by bullet suppression. And it's not just her. Octane stem, Pathy's grapple momentum, and more can in some situations be completely nulled by bullet suppression. I have died so many times because as I'm attempting to run away from an engagement I'm not prepared for, I just get slowed like I'm running through wet cement and then melted because I have no other choice but to attempt to fight, and it's infuriating. Map sizes. I'm going to rip off this band-aid now. World's Edge and Kings Canyon are the 2 best maps in the game, and specifically Season 2 Kings Canyon and Season 4 World's Edge. I am tired of these big-ass maps they keep making. Olympus is mid-tier, but Stormpoint and Broken Moon are some of the worst experience in the game. It is so goddamn boring. The maps are gigantic, so you often find yourself running around attempting to find people, but you won't find anyone. You have 2 options: drop hot and hope to survive, or drop safe and never find anyone for about 8 years. It's so goddamn dull. And if you're like me and main a legend without a movement ability, what was a slog to traverse becomes a fucking uphill climb with cement shoes. And the hill is made of molasses. They tried to relieve this problem with things like gravity cannons and zip rails, but the issue is that these are fixed, only sending you to certain points on the map, and they don't help if they don't lead you to a place you want to go. But even with these fast travel options, the issues of never finding people is still there. I have had countless matches where I am lucky to find more than one squad. Most of the time, it's because the other team we finally do find is better equipped than me and my team because they've been getting in fights, and fighting other teams strengthens your own because of things like the Evo shield and the loot distribution. For ranked, these maps are considered godlike because the rank system is trash and rewards placement over anything else, unless it changed for the billionth time, but I'll get to that later. In ranked, you don't want or need to fight all match, but in pubs, I want to be able to actually play the fucking game. I hate playing Loot Simulator 3000. And it's even worse when I have teammates that have to check every corner of every area, even when they are fully kitted. I swear to you, I have taken naps while waiting for my teammates to loot. If I could make one change to alleviate this problem, it would be to scale the amount of people with the map size. Kings Canyon and World's Edge stay at 60. Olympus has 72, and both Stormpoint and Broken Moon have 90. At least do it this way in pubs, in my opinion, if all the ranked randies want to complain. White armor and backpacks on the ground. Look, of all the nitpicking I'm going to do today, this is probably the pettiest, but I truly believe we should spawn in with a white backpacks, and because we spawn in with white armor, it should be removed from ground loot. Apex already has a general problem with loot distribution, as evident by the fact that they have to keep putting guns and attachments into care packages and the crafter in order to remove some of the clutter, but even that doesn't always work, because you will have countless situations where you land in a building, open 3 bins, loot both floors, and walk out with a P2020, a half a stack of light ammo, and about 14 billion other things you don't nor will ever need. It's insanity. Don't get me wrong, a large part of Battle Royales is RNG, and the game should have times where you gotta play John Wick and attempt to survive on little to nothing, but it's still annoying when it happens. And finally, Gibraltar. Fuck this legend. Delete him from the game. Chapter 5, Developer Disgusts. Let me tell you a story. In Season 2, the first ever collection event, the Iron Crown, came to Apex. It was similar to current collection events, incredibly expensive for no real reason, and back then, many people were extremely critical of the obvious greed on display. The only difference nowadays is the heirloom doesn't cost an extra $30 on top of the nearly $200 you have to spend to finish the event. In response to these valid criticisms, the dev team called us a bunch of whiny freeloaders. From that day forward, the relationship between the devs and the players have been a rocky one, with a long history of players coming up with valid and legit criticisms, like many of the ones I've talked about in this video, and the development team basically making fun of us in response. One time, there was a huge no-reg problem going on in the game, like bigger than normal. People were posting clips of them no-regging entire inventories of ammo, and one of the lead devs' response to people talking about how it's time to upgrade the servers to alleviate this problem was to make jokes about how stupid people are for asking for upgraded servers. And they did it on Twitter, in the replies to another lead dev doing the same thing. Daniel Z. Klein is a name that makes more than a few Apex veterans cringe. Any sort of criticism levied at the game would lead to Klein throwing a hissy fit and insulting people who made the criticisms. I remember one time we were stuck in this god-awful caustic meta where the big green bastard had no counterplay at all, did way too much damage with his gas, and just generally made the game really awful and unfun. Then the next patch he got even more buffs, and it was discovered that Klein was a caustic main. So when people rightfully called him out on not nerfing caustic due to his own personal bias, he basically told us we all just sucked and weren't good at the game and didn't know what we were talking about. He eventually got caught saying some bigoted shit in some tweets from a few years prior and got fired, and I want to make this clear. Being a dickhead to players is not nearly as severe as making bigoted statements, but it should be noted that Klein did not get relieved of his position as head dev until these old tweets were found. The way he treated the player base basically didn't matter, and this is reflective of how Respawn just kind of operates as a company. A particularly egregious instance I remember is how Hideouts, the lead security dev, basically one in charge of implementing bans, once made a joke at the player's expense about how much they complain about cheaters. Then he posted some DJ mix thing on his Twitter, and a fucking cheater responded to the tweet with a montage of the cheater cheating using Hideouts DJ mix. The hackers in Apex are so unafraid of Hideouts and the rest of the security team, they did it to his face without a care in the world, which is both fucking sad and ungodly hilarious. And look, I'm not going to pretend the player base is a bunch of little angels, okay? I have seen some truly hateful and visceral shit thrown at the devs, and I don't blame them for being a little bit on edge. But you simply cannot respond to the people with legit criticisms the way you respond to the assholes. Brushing off legit concerns because you have some 14-year-olds baby raging you along with the people approaching like adults is not the proper way to handle things. I have friends who are EA partners, and they say that the devs they have met have shown true love and passion for the game and the player base, but I don't see it. At the very least, I don't see it from lead devs. That's not entirely true. The lore and art departments seem to have been pretty sick. Moy Para, the lead art dev, is an amazing dude who regularly posts some of the coolest behind the scenes and teasers and such. And I'm also not saying that every dev at Respawn is like this. I'm sure actually a vast majority of the dev team also care, but their leaders simply don't seem to reflect that. Chapter 6. Corporate greed. Recently, as of writing this, I saw a tweet from Sword Dre Nilla about the startling discrepancy in viewership between Apex, Call of Duty, and Fortnite. Apex was at like 25,000 and the other two were over 100,000, and for a lot of people in the replies, it became apparent why. Apex has no content. Oh, sure, they release a new set of skins every month or so, but there's nothing more to it. You might get a shitty game mode no one wants to play, and the ones that people do want to play never last long enough to matter. The only content Apex creators can create is either around skins, so they have to buy those skins, or if they are insanely cracked. I'm going to cover this more in a bit, but Apex as a game has almost nothing to it. The BR mode has become stale, with the last great shakeup to it being the introduction of Evo shields, and that was like 12 seasons ago. The 3 strikes mode was, in a lot of people's opinions, a great change that many are now asking to become the base battle royale mode, but the devs don't seem keen to do so. As such, Apex content creators have to fall back on constantly giving the company money or risk becoming irrelevant in the sea of other Apex creators. And there's a reason for that. As of writing this, the Final Fantasy collab got announced. Instantly, people forgot about 3 strikes going away, all the problems they've been having this season, and now it's all about the hype they are to spend more money on more worthless skins. Every time Apex announces this kind of thing, it's never a good thing for the game. There's never any massive changes, and in the end, all they care about is digging into your pockets, and content creators feeling forced to buy the only semblance of content the game has to offer just feeds into an endless loop of EA and Respawn being rewarded for not working on the game. Each season has less and less to it. A new legend, minor map changes, some gun rotations, and if you're lucky, one or two legend changes. I will admit I haven't been around as much for about 5 seasons. I haven't read the patch notes, so maybe this part has changed. But when I was leaving in season 14, that was something I started noticing, how ungodly underwhelming everything started feeling. Every collection event felt like the companies were just reaching out to take the money out of a homeless man's cup. They want compensation for minimum work, while the game sits in a pitiful state with problems that have not only been around since season 0, but have, in some cases, gotten far worse. The reason people are nostalgic for the old days is because back then, they tried to shake up the maps, the gameplay, and add new things to the game to make the Battle Royale feel more unique and fun, and that's just not the case anymore. Chapter 7, Community Cunts. The very last thing to cover before my concluding thoughts is definitely the community. If you're looking to grow as an Apex creator, don't! This community loves clout, more so than other communities. I was genuinely surprised when I started DBD and people would be more willing to check out smaller channels and creators on a regular basis. Many large creators even would notice smaller creators and engage with them. But in the Apex community, if you aren't clouted or goated, nobody cares about you. The Apex community has a massive problem with people getting clout and then abandoning their friends who don't grow as much as them. It always seems to be about who you know and not what you know. The only way around this is to be incredibly good at the game. Some creators, even creators I enjoy, made their name off of just being genuinely cracked at the game, but the level you need to be for this to work for you can feel impossible sometimes. Personality, while still mattering a little bit, often takes a back seat to most of the community. And I don't just say this because I'm hilarious and never made anything out of Apex content, but because I've seen people who deserve far more than me not getting that recognition. Even sometimes with clout, I don't see people getting the recognition they deserve because they're always seen as the friend of someone bigger. I have a close personal friend in this community that I really think deserves to be a lot bigger than he is, but because he's always sitting in the shadow of the person that discovered him, he always seems to be fighting an uphill battle, which is just not fair to him. He deserves his own identity and his own way of having clout within himself, but because people are so clout hungry, they constantly focus on the bigger creators that are over the top of the smaller creators without ever lifting smaller creators up to the bigger creators' positions. The Apex community is shallow and hateful. They treat anyone who isn't good at the game like some kind of peasant, and my god, the amount of footstooling the community does for higher level streamers, it really feels like so much fun shit gets changed at the whim of the higher level pro players and streamers. Self-res, Arc Stars, Lifeline Res Shield, Kraber Guaranteed One Shot, and more. All these neat and fun things removed from the game in the name of quote-unquote competitive integrity, which is bullshit because the integrity of any sense of competitiveness goes away when you realize this is a fucking battle royale and RNG and powerful gear that gives you inherent advantages is part of the fucking game. But because pro players whined enough and their rabid fans think that if they suck them off enough, they will get some of that precious clout that gives you a leg up in this community, genuinely cool shit got nerfed and removed. Like, take the discussion around aim assist. God, I wish I was drinking alcohol for this section. Look, I'm just going to say it. Aim assist is not as good as you all say it is. Wait! Before you type your dumb argument, let me speak. There are far more advantages to M&K over controller. No one that has ever swapped from M&K to controller has ever gotten better at the game on controller than they were on M&K. But everyone who swaps from controller to M&K and actually sticks with the input sees gradual and massive improvement over time. If aim assist was as strong as you all say, then there would be no people in bronze and console. Everyone would die instantly on console and it'd be full of Masters players. I also call bullshit on people saying they'd be fine with aim assist if it was only 0.4 and not 0.6 like console aim is. But you're all full of shit, because before crossplay came to the game, y'all were bitching about aim assist then, and I'm just gonna say it, I think you all think aim assist is broken because you've all tricked yourself into believing it is, like some sort of weird placebo effect. I once saw a tweet from a fucking pro player that the reason the anti-cheat system is bad is because they would have a hard time programming a bot to tell the difference between aim assist and aimbotting. That's the level of delusion that you've all gotten to. But I digress. I could dedicate an entire video to the aim assist debate alone. Overall, the Apex community starts to feel unwelcoming. Even for someone who was there from the beginning, like me, it was difficult for me to find a foothold or a place. Everyone's got their little cliques and their little areas that they play around in, and everybody's always chasing the clout bubble more and more. And people will straight up step on you to get higher, and it's just not a very great place to be. I don't like the Apex community. They're not by far the worst gaming community I've ever dealt with. The League of Legends still takes that role, but they are, for all intents and purposes, not great people to be around. And that's not to say there aren't good people in the Apex community and there aren't good large streamers, just like I'm not saying in the dev section that all the devs are bad. There are obviously exceptions, but it just seems like a lot of the worst people in the Apex community take up the majority of it, and I just don't have fun being there. Chapter 8, Conclusion. There is some stuff I didn't talk about in this video, if only because I couldn't find good slots for them, like the abhorrent rank system that they can't seem to leave the fuck alone. I personally think the first ever rank system was the best they've ever done, but ranked itself is miserable to play due to the inherent way to earn ranks being not taking fights until the end game. And adding a more complicated math equations or fucking changing the name of ranked points to ladder points isn't going to solve whatever problem you think you're fixing. Or the fiasco with the cross progression recently, where they took almost 2 months to get it to everyone, and I think some people still haven't gotten it, and those who have reported problems. Hell, how did it not merge stats and badges? You're telling me you couldn't write a code that did some simple fucking addition? I don't know about that one, Chief. But at the end of the day, I will say this. When Apex is functional, the audio is right, the servers aren't laggy, and the game isn't constantly dropping frames, it can be a genuinely fun game. I love the fluidity and the feel of Apex when it works as intended. You feel like such a badass, wall jumping, sliding into an enemy, melting them with a quick burst of your hemlock followed up by a clean peacekeeper shot. The feeling of a wingman hitting headshots consecutively, zip lines and gravity cannons and movement abilities make you feel like you're flying. This game feels amazing. Again, when it works. But there's so many things wrong with it. I don't think the game can ever be redeemable. I keep thinking back to that Draynilla tweet. Remember when Apex was considered the best battle royale? Because of its mix of skill and fun. Fortnite's stolen that title back, and I'll be honest, were it not for the absolute trash that is the Epic Games Store launcher, I would drop Apex for Fortnite completely. I only come back to Apex from time to time to play for an hour or two, then drop it for weeks or months on end because nothing that is inherently wrong with the game ever gets fixed, as EA and Respawn look for bigger and bigger payouts. I will say this, however. I once said, and I still truly believe, that if Respawn was purchased by a company that gave a shit, like Riot, or Epic, or Blizzard, or something like that, many of the inherent issues with the game would be fixed. There would still be corporate greed, obviously, but at the very least there would be better servers, optimization, and more. Apex's inherent problems come from the refusal to fix fundamental problems, and that will be the game's downfall. It's the foundation that holds up all the other bullshit. But that's all I have for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. It turned out a lot shorter than I thought. The script was 19.5 pages, so that's really weird, but I guess I just speak really fast. So, of course, let me know you guys' thoughts down below. I don't just make these videos to talk at you for however many amount of time. I genuinely do like reading your comments, even if I don't necessarily respond to all of them. So please let me know what you guys think. But before we get out of here, I do want to give a special thank you to my channel members, The Gamer Geek, Damari D. Cordova, Peter RJ, The Cannibal Main, Spirit Upgrades, and Nuclear Bomb for their additional support. If you want to find out how to become a channel member today and get perks like seeing videos early or merch discounts, then please hit that join button down below. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one.